I knew the HOA was going to be a pain when I moved into Clearview Lakes, but I didn't expect it to escalate into a legal war over a damn gate. My name's Carson Belling, retired firefighter turned custom woodworker. I bought the house for the oversized corner lot, plenty of space for my dog, my projects, and most importantly, a bit of peace. But peace wasn't on the agenda for my neighbor across the street, the queen of the HOA herself, Judith Delaney. Blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, and a voice that could slice drywall. She ran the HOA like a dictator who just discovered clipboards and bylaws. It all started when I installed a beautiful cedar gate at the entrance to my backyard. I designed it myself, stained it deep walnut, and capped it with a wrought iron arch. It stood at exactly 6.5 feet, half a foot higher than the fence. It was gorgeous and solid, and it kept my dog, Hunter, from bolting after squirrels. 3 days after the install, I opened my mailbox and found a citation from the HOA. Violation 228. Gate exceeds height limitation of 6 feet per HOA Regulation 4.3b. I leaned against my truck and stared at the paper. Seriously? Half a foot? I walked straight to Judith's house. She answered the door like she'd been waiting. "You can't just build whatever you want, Carson," she said, crossing her arms. "This isn't the Wild West. It's 6.5 feet. There's no safety issue. No line of sight problem. You can't even see it from the street unless you're trying," I said. "Rules are rules," she snapped. "If everyone ignored the bylaws, this neighborhood would look like a junkyard." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean like your plastic flamingo army?" Her face flushed. "Those are seasonal decor. Approved under subsection 5.2. I walked away. I wasn't about to argue with a woman who weaponized garden ornaments. Instead, I did what I do best: measure, build, and document everything. I pulled out my copy of the HOA rules. Turns out, there was no specific gate height limit, just a general fence and barrier guideline that was vague as hell and hadn't been updated since 1998. I checked the city's zoning laws too. My gate? Totally legal. But Judith wasn't backing down. 2 weeks later, I got a second notice. This time, it came with a fine $500. I didn't pay. Next day, I caught her standing in front of my property with a measuring tape and her clipboard like she was surveying a crime scene. "Still too tall," she said when she noticed me. I held out my phone. "Smile, you're being recorded." "That's trespassing." She stomped off, but not before saying, "You'll be hearing from the board." Perfect, I thought. Let them come. And that's when I decided to raise the gate even higher. 7 feet, 6 inches. Same design, just taller and a bit more dramatic. I added a motion sensor light on top. Judith saw it the next morning and nearly dropped her dog poop bag in my driveway. She screamed across the street, "That is a direct violation of everything." I smiled. "Good. Now you've got something real to file." 3 days after I raised the gate, I got a certified letter hand-delivered by a courier wearing mirrored sunglasses and a Bluetooth earpiece. The envelope was thick, legal thick, and stamped with the HOA's official seal. Inside, a cease and desist order drafted by some attorney who must have been bored enough to bill for every comma. I read it twice, then set it down beside my coffee cup and picked up the phone. "Ronnie," I said, when the line picked up, "I've got a situation that smells like bad lawyering and worse politics. Got a minute?" Ronnie Tran, my old high school buddy, now a property rights attorney with a fondness for litigation, didn't even hesitate. 10 minutes. Bring everything. We'll fix this. I loaded a binder with every HOA document I had, including my annotated rulebook, photos of the gate, timestamped security footage of Judith crossing onto my lawn uninvited, and a printed copy of the city's zoning code. Ronnie laid it all out on his conference table, his brow furrowed. "They're bluffing," he said. "This cease and desist has no teeth. The HOA can't override municipal code. And unless they've got an architectural committee vote on the record, they've got nothing binding." I leaned back in the chair, arms folded. "Think they know that? They're hoping you don't. Let me guess, they fined you again. Twice. One for non-compliance, and another for escalation. Whatever that means." Ronnie tapped the folder. "We'll respond in writing. Meanwhile, file a counterclaim with the city permit office. If they want to play court games, we'll play defense and offense." I filed the paperwork the next day. Within 48 hours, the city inspector confirmed on the record that the gate violated no municipal codes, no easement lines, and no safety ordinances. I copied that letter and mailed it to every board member, certified. That should have ended it. But Judith wasn't done. The week after, I came home from the lumber yard to find a backhoe parked in front of my house. A contractor crew none local stood around sipping coffee and eyeing my fence like it was scheduled for demolition. I stepped out of the truck slow, calm. "Can I help you?" One guy, hard hat cocked to the side, looked up from a clipboard. "Work order from the Clearview HOA. Says we're to remove an illegal structure." I laughed once and didn't smile. "You touch that gate, you'll be explaining yourself to the sheriff and my lawyer." He blinked. "You're the owner?" I nodded. He glanced back at the crew. "We were told it was city-ordered." It wasn't. "I've got the city's sign-off right here." I pulled out a laminated copy of the inspector's letter and handed it to him. He read it, whistled low, and waved off the crew. "We're out. We don't do jobs that scream lawsuit." They left tire tracks in Judith's grass. That night, I installed 2 new security cameras, one facing the street, one angled toward her lawn. I wasn't taking chances. The next morning, I woke up to find my mailbox smashed in. Bent post, splintered wood. A chunk of concrete lay beside it. I called the sheriff. Deputy Calder showed up within the hour, took one look at the footage from my camera, and narrowed his eyes. "Is that her?" he asked, pointing at the grainy image of a woman with a scarf over her face, swinging a cinder block. "Sure looks like it. She's wearing the same boots she had on at the last board meeting." He jotted some notes. "That's felony vandalism." "Want to press charges?" "Yes." He gave a nod like he'd been waiting for me to say it. "We'll take care of it." 2 days later, a patrol car rolled up to Judith's house. She was escorted out in front of half the neighborhood, ceramic garden gnome still in hand. The HOA responded not with an apology but with an emergency meeting notice. I went. The meeting was held in a rented hall, packed wall to wall. Word had spread fast, especially after someone, not me, uploaded the arrest footage to the neighborhood Facebook group. Judith wasn't present. Her vice president, a man named Carl with a mustache that looked like it had tenure, tried to take charge. "We're here to address the matter of Mr. Belling's violation of architectural standards," I stood. "Point of order, Carl. According to your own bylaws, emergency meetings can't be used to amend or enforce architectural rules. Also, you need a quorum, which you don't have." Carl stammered. "We have special authority under Clause 8. No, you don't." I pulled out a printed copy of the bylaws. 8.4 refers to emergency safety issues. My gate isn't a fire hazard, a trip hazard, or a flood risk. Unless you've got a new clause about emotional discomfort, you're wasting everyone's time. Someone laughed. Another clapped. Carl turned red. "We'll reconvene with legal counsel present." "Great," I said. "Bring them. Mine's already filed a petition for injunctive relief and damages. You can read it when it's served." The meeting ended in a shuffle of whispers. A week later, Ronnie and I stood before a county judge. Their lawyer, a guy in a wrinkled suit who looked like he hadn't read the file, shuffled papers and mumbled about community aesthetics. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is the gate visible from the road?" "Only if you stand on the neighbor's lawn and lean sideways," I said. The judge turned to their attorney. "You've got no standing. City code overrides HOA guidelines in this case." Petition granted in favor of the plaintiff. We walked out with a signed order. No further fines, full reimbursement of the citations, and a restraining order against any HOA member stepping onto my property without written notice. The kicker? The judge included a clause requiring the HOA to revise their architectural standards to meet current municipal law within 90 days. Judith resigned the next morning. Her flamingos disappeared overnight. The new board president? A retired contractor named Lisa, who knocked on my door 2 days later holding a plate of brownies and said, "We've got a lot of bad policy to fix. You in?" I took the plate. "Let's build something better." The brownies were good. Real good. I didn't realize how badly the neighborhood needed a reset until Lisa sat on my back porch with a notebook and a pen that clicked like a metronome when she was focused. She wasn't just trying to clean up the HOA mess, she was taking inventory of everything Judith's regime had bulldozed over, figuratively and literally. "So," she said between bites, "any idea what this thing is?" She held up a crumpled, coffee-stained flyer that had been stuffed in her mailbox. It had no official header, no formatting, just a warning in bold black font. Residents must comply with aesthetic standards or face property reassessment. I took it and turned it over. Nothing on the back. That's not from the board, I said. At least not the legitimate one. Lisa's jaw tightened. I've gotten 3 in the last week. So have 6 other homes. Always hand-delivered. No envelope. No signature. We both knew who was behind it, but we didn't have proof yet. Lisa stood up and brushed off her jeans. I'll draft a notice. We're not playing gangland HOA politics. We're going to do this by the book. That night, I reviewed the footage from my driveway cameras. Around 3 in the morning, the motion alert started. A figure in a hooded sweater walked up to my neighbor's porch, tucked something into their screen door, then moved to the next house. I zoomed in. The stride was familiar. The gait had a stiffness I'd seen before. I called Hunter to my side, gave his ears a scratch, then uploaded the footage and emailed it to Ronnie. By morning, I had a reply. This is enough for a preliminary investigation. I'll forward it to the DA's office. Lisa called an hour later. Carson, you may want to see what someone just posted in the community group. I pulled it up. A new anonymous account had uploaded a spreadsheet of full list of residents, addresses, past due payments, and fines, many of which had already been waived or overturned. It included private notes, compliant, problematic, board risk, and under my name, litigious, targeted. Lisa's number popped up again. Who had access to this? I asked, before she could speak. Only the executive board, and only one person ever requested hard copies of the dues ledger, Judith. Last October. It was identity theft, a breach of financial privacy. And if that list had been used to influence any board decisions or pressure votes, it was corruption. I walked into the sheriff's office with a USB drive, printed spreadsheets, and a signed affidavit from Lisa. The deputy on duty took one look at the files and called in the county investigator. It didn't take long. Within 72 hours, a search warrant was executed at Judith's house. They found a file cabinet packed with documents she had no right to possess: bank records, permit applications, and even photos of residents' homes with annotations like "remove swing set," or "paint trim," or "fine." The sheriff later told me there were over 300 individual files. Some of them dated back 5 years. But the kicker? A ledger labeled Special Projects Fund. It showed discrete withdrawals, small amounts, never more than a few hundred from the HOA's operating account. The purpose listed: enforcement services. The money trail led to a private security consultant in another county, a man with a record for impersonating municipal inspectors. That's when the DA got involved. Judith was arrested again, this time for misappropriation of funds, unlawful surveillance, and misuse of private financial data. Her bail was set so high, even her real estate holdings couldn't cover it. The courtroom was packed the day of her arraignment. She didn't speak. Her attorney did, claiming everything was a misunderstanding and that Judith had been overzealous in pursuit of community standards. The judge wasn't amused. She was remanded into custody pending trial. Lisa met me outside the courthouse, clutching a manila folder. "Guess what else we found?" she said, handing it to me. Inside were copies of alterations Judith had submitted to the HOA's records. She'd rewritten minutes from past meetings, forged signatures to push through rules no one voted on, and even added a clause to the bylaws giving herself executive override authority, a clause that never legally existed. That explained how she fined me before the board even met. I asked. Lisa nodded. She'd been doing it for years. You were just the first one who made it expensive. Suddenly, it all made sense: the fines that never matched the rulebook, the weird selective enforcement, the fear people had about speaking up. Judith hadn't been enforcing the HOA's rules. She'd been creating her own, one fake vote at a time. The county froze the HOA's account pending audit. Ronnie was already building a civil case on behalf of 15 homeowners who'd been fined or bullied under false pretenses. They'd likely get restitution. And if the audit confirmed what we suspected, there could be a class action suit. Lisa called an emergency town hall not to enforce anything, but to rebuild trust. People showed up in folding chairs, on picnic blankets, even from lawn chairs they dragged down the street. It wasn't formal. There were no clipboards. Just neighbors, finally breathing. "I'm not here to tell you what to do with your homes," Lisa said from the front steps of the community center. "I'm here to ask what kind of neighborhood you want to live in." Someone said, "One where we aren't afraid to plant tomatoes." Another, "One where a gate isn't considered a declaration of war." Laughter, but the good kind. Lisa looked at me. "Carson's got a workshop on his property. He's offered to help us build a community message board. No more secret memos. No more anonymous warnings. Everything out in the open. I hadn't officially offered, but I raised my hand anyway. I'll supply the lumber. If anyone's got paint, bring it. The next weekend, we built it. Right at the entrance to the neighborhood, beside the old flower bed that hadn't seen a bloom since Judith outlawed non-native species. We used reclaimed wood, metal brackets, and a shingled awning. On the side, we added a mailbox labeled Ideas. Hunter lay under the bench while kids painted handprints on the lower panels. By the time it was done, it looked like something out of a storybook. But it wasn't just decoration. It was a statement. No more backroom decisions. No more fear. The HOA bylaws were rewritten in public workshops. Every section was debated, discussed, and voted on. Outdated rules were removed. New ones were added with transparency and majority approval. Lisa instituted term limits, budget reports, and an audit clause requiring 2 non-board members to review finances quarterly. Judith's trial was scheduled for the fall. She faced over a dozen charges. The DA hinted there could be more if the private investigator confirmed her role in the forged documents. As for me, I extended my gate another 6 inches. Purely aesthetic, of course. I added a weather vane to the top shaped like a flamingo, just for irony. People laughed every time they passed it. And for the first time since I moved in, no one knocked on my door with a clipboard. Turns out, sometimes the best way to stand up to a wall of red tape is to build a better gate. By late spring, the air around Clearview Lakes had changed. The fear that once hung over neighbors like a thundercloud had lifted, replaced with something that felt dangerously close to optimism. Kids played soccer in front yards again. People painted their shutters without asking permission. And nobody flinched when they saw a clipboard. But the real storm had only just begun. A week before Judith's preliminary hearing, Ronnie called me from the courthouse. "There's something new," he said, his voice sharp. "The auditors found a second account under the HOA's tax ID. It's not in the official budget." "How much?" I asked. "North of $75,000, he said. "Pulled out in small amounts over 5 years. Disguised as community repairs." My jaw clenched. There haven't been repairs. Exactly. Ronnie had already contacted the county's financial crimes unit. Turns out, this wasn't just about fines and fraud anymore, it was embezzlement. And worse, the funds had been funneled through a shell landscaping company registered under a fake name. A quick search revealed something worse. The business license had been filed using the address of one of Judith's former board members, a man named Elliot Parrish. No one had seen Elliot for over a year. He'd moved out suddenly, claiming family issues. But the timeline didn't add up. His name was still listed as an active consultant in a few of the HOA's internal documents. Lisa and I met Ronnie at his office that night. He had a full whiteboard covered in arrows, names, and dates. At the center was a grainy photo of Elliot's driver's license renewal taken in Nevada. Underneath it, a bank transfer receipt showing multiple deposits from the HOA's secondary account. They thought no one would notice because they kept the amounts low and spread out, Ronnie said. But the real kicker? They used HOA funds to pay for a private investigator. Lisa leaned forward. Why would they need a PI? They were targeting residents, Ronnie said. Anyone who challenged their authority. Digging into people's finances, searching for leverage. We found billing invoices for background checks on over a dozen families. Lisa's face went pale. They were trying to blackmail people. It's worse, Ronnie said. The investigator they used? He's under indictment in another county for illegal surveillance and tampering with public documents. Your HOA paid him over $12,000. By morning, the county sheriff's office had issued warrants. Not just for Judith, but also for Elliot and 2 former board members who had co-signed disbursements. The charges ranged from felony embezzlement to conspiracy to commit fraud and unlawful private investigation activity. Judith was taken from county lockup into federal holding. Elliot was located in Reno and extradited. The other 2 were arrested at their homes. One tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding. The other didn't say a word. The community watched from behind curtains and porch railings as the last remnants of Judith's regime were hauled away. The county froze all assets associated with the HOA accounts. A forensic accountant was assigned to comb through every transaction dating back 10 years. Ronnie filed a civil suit on behalf of 32 residents. Damages were estimated at over $200,000. Lisa called a community assembly that weekend not to vote, not to debate, but just to talk. No folding chairs this time. Everyone brought their own. There was a table of lemonade pitchers, a stack of paper cups, and a dog asleep under the snack table. I never thought a homeowners association would need criminal prosecution, she said. But here we are. And what matters now is what we do going forward. I stepped up beside her, holding a thick binder of proposed changes, real ones this time, drafted with input from neighbors and checked against city code. We're not just fixing rules, I said. We're rebuilding trust. No more backdoor decisions. No more hidden accounts. No more manufactured violations. There was applause, not polite, not hesitant. The kind that came from people who'd been waiting a long time to be heard. Over the next month, we dismantled the entire architecture of the old HOA. The bylaws were rewritten from scratch. All financial activity was published online in a shared portal, accessible to every resident. We abolished fines entirely and replaced them with a voluntary compliance review process. Committees were formed not just for architecture, but for community events, neighborhood safety, and even a shared tool library. The most surprising part? People volunteered. The same neighbors who once avoided involvement out of fear now stepped forward with ideas, energy, and time. The gate? It stayed. 7 feet, 6 inches. Still standing tall. But now it had a new addition, a small brass plaque at the base, engraved with a simple line. Built to last. Fought for justice. It wasn't a monument. It was a reminder. One afternoon in early summer, I was sanding down a bench for the community park when a man walked up the driveway. Clean cut, mid-40s, city badge clipped to his belt. You Carson Belling? He asked. Depends who's asking. Detective Morales. Financial Crimes Division. I wiped my hands. What can I do for you? He handed me a sealed envelope. Thought you'd want to know. Parish cut a deal. Full confession. Turned over all remaining documents. I opened the envelope. Inside was a typed statement, notarized and signed, outlining the whole operation. How Judith had created the fake landscaping company. How Elliot had set up the bank account. How they'd rigged board elections by stuffing ballot boxes at the community mailbox station. And how they'd intentionally targeted vocal residents with trumped-up violations to keep them quiet. This going to trial? I asked. Morales nodded. Federal level. RICO charges included. Might take a while, but they're cooked. I handed the packet back. Make sure the whole thing burns. He gave a tight nod and left. I brought the documents to Lisa, and we added them to the archive we were building, physical and digital. Not just as records, but as evidence of how far we'd come. The final step came 3 weeks later at the county board meeting. The registrar officially stripped the Clearview Lakes HOA of its corporate charter. It no longer existed as a legal entity. In its place, the neighborhood voted to form a voluntary civic association. No mandatory dues, no enforcement powers, just a group of residents working together to improve their community. There were no cheers, no fireworks. Just quiet satisfaction, like closing the last page of a long, difficult book. Lisa and I stood at the edge of the new community garden, watching 2 teenagers install a compost bin. Think it'll hold? She asked. The compost. The neighborhood. I looked around. Kids laughing at the swing set Judith once tried to ban. A couple repainting their mailbox. Neighbors chatting freely under the oak tree that used to be on the removal watch list. It's already stronger than it ever was, I said. She smiled, then turned back toward the garden. We should plant sunflowers. You think they'll grow? They'll fight for space, reach higher than they're supposed to, she said. And they'll outshine everything else. I like that. We didn't need a gate to keep people out anymore. We'd built something better, a community that finally remembered who it belonged to. And that was worth more than any fence, rulebook, or clipboard ever could be.